The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading.
Make sure to subscribe to the Market Talk YouTube channel. You can watch our latest interviews with top market analysts in the country, find bonus content, and much more. It's easy. Just go to youtube.com/@MarketTalkAg and hit the subscribe button. Or you can search for Market Talk Ag on YouTube.
Well, there is plenty to talk about when it comes to weather here as we start the final week of March. Let's dive in and take a look at all the different impacts that are happening across the country with Eric Snodgrass from Nutrien Ag Solutions. Eric, thanks again for joining us here this week. And, you know, from the northern border to the southern border of the U.S., it just feels like we have a lot going on. Rain, snow, blizzards. That all hazards weather map looks pretty colorful on Monday morning. So get us up to speed on just the latest that we've been seeing here the last few days, Eric.
Yeah, so finally, after a weekend of snow that stretched from Montana all the way through the lower Michigan area and then got over actually into Northeast. Did you see this weekend? There was 18 inches of snow in parts of New York and Vermont, New Hampshire. Man, a huge snows. I actually think it was the biggest snow they had all winter. Wow. Hit the Northeast now, and now that we're into spring. But really, this system that's ejecting in the middle section of the country, yeah, we have blizzard warnings that stretch even early this morning from parts of Colorado, Kansas, getting into Nebraska, South Dakota, and Minnesota. So it's a pretty large area of strong winds with some snow. Overall, the snow that did fall over the weekend added to what we've got today is going to put a few places in the upper Midwest, Western Corn Belt, over, well over a foot of snow. Now, if I were someone from Iowa, all right, so Iowa had a thunderstorm this morning, rains over the weekend, but snow late last week. I mean, it's such a wide variety. Doesn't matter. There was moisture in all of this, and it's desperately needed. And to see the forecast models put that that continued trend in there is something I'm pretty excited about. I want to see more moisture in the Western Corn Belt going forward. But let's go south of there. Yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a dust storm that started in Mexico and New Mexico, went all the way to Oklahoma, which means it went through Texas. And that has been an area that I've been concerned about, not just for spring, but for summer. And here's the reason why. I felt as though the atmosphere, as it's come into the Western U.S., has had a bit more momentum than normal since February. And what typically happens when that occurs is that we have this natural rain shadow that starts from the Rocky Mountains and goes into the Central Plains. Normally, you find where the rain shadow ends at about the 100th meridian, somewhere around there between the 100th and the 95th meridian. Well, if we end up getting stronger winds coming off the Western Mountains, it can push that drier air farther to the east. And so when I start to see widespread dust storms, that's not uncommon. We get dust storms down there. But I don't like those springs where we can't get a slow enough low to deliver moisture to that part of Texas and Colorado and Western Oklahoma and New Mexico. And that maybe just tells us where we need to kind of have our ears perked up about worrying for later in spring and summer some drought issues. So yes, that's all just this weekend. And here we go into a week where things are going to continue to be quite active, I think.
Yeah, definitely watching all this activity. You know, one caveat, I talked to my mom in northern Iowa over the weekend, and she talked about how it was heavy, wet snow. And then throughout the course of the day, the temperature went up and it switched over to rain. So to your point there, some of those dry areas of Iowa getting all modes of moisture. Looking at this week ahead, Eric, looking into the Easter holiday coming up here and more, thinking about spring planting on the horizon. I mean, talk to me about this week ahead. Are we going to see some of this continued precipitation? Are the models changing? What are we looking at heading into the Easter holiday?
Yeah, I mean, if you and I would have recorded this on like last Thursday or Friday, I'm glad we didn't. But I would have told you I expected a storm system rolling through the midsection of the country on Easter weekend. And it's fun because when that happens, it gets a lot of folks thinking about that old adage, right? If you get rain on Easter Sunday, it's going to rain the next 7 Sundays. Well, okay, the system that I had hoped would be there is now getting kind of curled up and blocked up in the West Coast. So I saw open systems. I saw 3 more coming before we got to the end of the first week of April. And now this next system says, it's just going to hang out, move more north-south along the West Coast. So what does all that mean? That means for a lot of us, the midsection of the country outside of where the heaviest snow was right now, a lot of us in the Midwest, a lot of us in the Central Plains, a lot of us in the Mid-South, we're going to go into the end of this weekend and the Easter weekend with limited precipitation and much above average temperatures. I thought it was going to be a cold Easter, and here we are. We've now got one shift and one feature south of Alaska, and the whole pattern falls apart from what we thought a week ago. Now, I don't hear that and say put the pedal down and go, because there are still some indications we've not fully gotten away from the risk of the early April cooler weather coming back. So what I mean by that is that if you told me to pin down a date for you, it's not Easter this year, it's tax day. I think that once you get past mid-April, the risk of us having, big, long duration, 5-6 days of much below average, it's gone. It doesn't mean we get away from our last frost at that point. Although climatologically, where I live, Jesse, right here in Illinois, our climatological last frost date is about May 15th. No, April 15th. Forgive me there, April 15th. I just think we make a breakaway and get consistently mild once we get past, I think, the first 10 to 12 days of April. And once that occurs, I think we're going to see rapid planting. And that's probably because a lot of folks are concerned, is this crazy winter and spring going to lead to some sort of problem this summer? So they want to get in as fast as they can.
Well, and thinking about this crazy winter and spring that we've had and the moisture that's rolling through early this week, I mean, what does this all kind of mean? I would have to think this is going to be beneficial in some of the driest areas of the Midwest, Eric.
It is, and that's what we wanted, right? We wanted to get this. We've had 2 dry falls in a row that have really ripped out a lot of moisture in the soil. We got to get recovery for that, and so I'm not upset about kind of adverse weather at the end of March and early April for the sake of moisture. But, to be honest with you, we look out there longer term, there's 2 camps, and it's mostly coming from the models and the analogs. And here's the idea. I've got a suite of models that suggest that El Nino doesn't just die, it like epically fails and goes right into La Nina. One of those models is one we run here in North America. That's called the CFSV2. That model says that by mid to late summer, we're back in like 1988 levels of widespread dryness. I mean, that's a very aggressive model. How much faith do I put in it? None. I don't. Not at all. So we have another camp of models that says, I think that the El Nino is going to fade where it is now. It's going to get into neutral conditions by spring, and by early summer, maybe looking at weak La Nina, not like a super Nina. And those models tend to keep the dryness in farther to the west. In fact, they try to anchor it across the Western Plains. They try to anchor it throughout the Great Basin. That's where they try to keep the heat as well. Now, our government, the CPC, just released on last week on Thursday, their forecast, and almost completely mimics that one from the European model. Excuse me. So what does it all mean? It all means a couple of things. One, we don't know at all, because these models last spring had skill scores of -20. So we're all very kind of jaded, right? You look at that, something that hit you hard last year, and like, I'm not going to trust you. So if I can give you one last perspective, I'm going to use analog years. I'm going to go back to 1950. Every time you had an El Nino at Christmas that faded in spring and was gone by summer, look at all of them. We tend to have our greatest drought risk from the Southern Plains, close to the Mid-South, close to actually where you are, or in the Southeast. So that meant a lot of the corn and soybean belt had ridge riding thunderstorms for most of summer. It also tended to be hotter in those summers. So hotter, wetter is the Midwest outlook, hotter, drier across the South. That's what my current thinking is. But I don't know where in the South. Could be the Southern Plains, could be the Mid-South, could be the Southeast, because each of those years had a different flavor. But that's my thinking right now. I won't fully have an idea on that till let's call it the solstice. We talk on June 21st, and then I think I'll know where I think the rest of summer is going to go. But that's the way I feel about it this morning. You just wake up some days and you get a lot of conflicting signals, and it kind of makes you rethink what you thought the pattern was going to do. And that's every day in weather. So we're used to that.
Definitely. We definitely are. A couple notes on South America. Anything big you're watching down there this week, Eric?
Yeah. So two quick things. One, it is raining and expected to rain quite a bit across Brazil's Safrinha corn acres. And this is a critical time of rain for them, because April is their most important month. Now, if the things I mentioned that could happen to affect North America do happen, mainly the MJO moves, El Nino continues to fade, then we should expect an early slowdown of the monsoon. But right now, I'll be honest with you, I looked at some NDVI data, some of the recent rains that came through parts of Brazil's Safrinha crop. I mean, I cannot give you maybe like I could a week or two ago. I can't now give you some strong bullish news out of that safrinha crop. I think that this rain is critical, but we'll have to watch if later in the season it gets dry. So if it gets dry in April and early May, that's a dry finish on the crop, could peel back some of their production numbers, but they are getting just-in-time rains right now.
All right. Well, folks, can stay up to date with the latest weather, ag-wx.com for all the latest forecast details. And you can sign up for Eric's weather newsletter there as well, ag-wx.com. Eric Snodgrass, Nutrient Ag Solutions. Always good to talk with you, my friend. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, Jesse.